Good morning. The hearing board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is Tuesday, July 9th, 2019, and the time is 9 o'clock a.m. We are meeting in the hearing board room, M. Diamond Bar. We have several items on today's calendar, including one that I don't believe is listed, but we're going to begin this morning with the swearing in of two new members of the hearing board and the re-swearing in of one member of the board who has been reconfirmed for another term. And then we're going to have the election of the chair and vice chair, being the first hearing of the AQMD year. And then we're going to have a consent calendar item, Lake Arrowhead Community Services District, case number 6142-1, and one scheduled hearing, which is South Coast AQMD versus D&D Disposal, Inc., doing business as West Coast Rendering Company, 3462-4. I'm going to turn it over to the clerk of the board for the first two items, but I want to remind everyone to please, if you haven't already, please silence your cell phones for the hearing. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to the clerk.
Thank you. So I will ask Ms. Cynthia Verdugo-Peralta to stand, and Dr. Alan Bernstein and Senator Nate Holden be swearing everyone in today. Yes, if you don't mind. And I will ask that you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. During such times as I hold the above office, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. Good. Cut that one. We've got to put that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. That I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations. Your turn. You're sworn in. Another term. All right. Moving right along. We're moving on to the election of chair and vice chair for the term July 2019 to June 30th, 2020. I will open the floor for nominations for chair at this time.
Well, I'll go ahead and nominate Ms. Pruzak for the chair.
Second.
Okay, seeing no, I don't see any further nominations. Senator Holden?
I nominate.
Seeing no further nominations, I will close the floor. Those in favor for Ms. Pruzak for chair, say aye.
Aye.
There's no one opposed, so the ayes have it, and Ms. Julie Pruzak is elected chair. All right, easy enough. At this time, I will open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Mr. Mohan Balagopalan. Although new and junior, still on the board, Mr. Balagopalan has proven a great understanding and knowledge of how the board works and of his role, and I think he'll make a great vice chair.
Second.
Okay. Anyone else? I don't see any further nominations, so at this time I will close the floor. Those in favor of Mohan Balagopalan for vice chair, say aye. Aye. The ayes have it, and Mr. Balagopalan is elected vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Normally, when we have a consent calendar item, I would ask if any member of the public wishes to be heard, and we would take that matter first. I'm going to ask if any member of the public is here for Lake Arrowhead Community Services District, case number 6142-1. I see none, but I am going to take this up first because Ms. Verdugo Peralta has indicated that she wishes to pull the matter from consent and have a regular hearing on the matter. And as we know, under our rules, any member of the board may do so for reasons of, hopefully for, if you wish to do so, for not having adequate evidence and wishing to have a hearing. However, given the late notice of that, because of the newness of the board, we are not going to hold a hearing today because the parties obviously did not have notice and are not present. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to ask if this will be sufficient for Ms. Verdugo Peralta. What I'd like to do is I'd like to set the hearing for 2 weeks to July 25th. That's a Thursday. The short variance that already stands and is protecting Lake Arrowhead Community Services District under variance protection goes until either August 22nd or until a hearing can be held for the regular variance. And since we're not holding that hearing today, that protection will still remain while we await that 2 weeks for the hearing to be held on July 25th. And then I'm going to ask Ms. Verdugo Peralta if it is sufficient, if you have questions still to ask to solicit or elicit evidence that is not present in your mind to make the 6 findings, if you could ask those few questions directly to the clerk of the board so we're not having a hearing outside of a hearing, a public hearing, and have those questions forwarded directly to Lake Arrowhead Community Services District for them to then determine whether they can answer those questions in a supplemental declaration. And then what I would ask is that that supplemental declaration be submitted by next Wednesday, and that our board, it be submitted to all board members, and the board members would then, by next week, make a determination whether it can remain on consent or whether we need to have an actual hearing on July 25th, which would give notice to the parties.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in agreement with that. That would suffice and give me the, I think, information that I'm seeking to be able to make a proper decision.
Okay, and if not, then we can always have July 25th be an actual hearing date with the parties present. Okay, so we will not hold that hearing today for reasons that I've just discussed. We want to ensure that the short variance stays intact until we can actually have a hearing. And in the meantime, I will ask Ms. Verdugo Peralta if you could have those questions to the clerk by today or tomorrow, the latest. And then if the clerk could forward them on with the instructions that a supplemental declaration please be provided by next Wednesday. Don't know that date. And then if we can all read it and make that determination by Thursday. Okay.
And just adding that any other board members that may have questions that also submit those through that same procedure.
Any outstanding questions, please submit them.
In some case, you could be asked a question with a question, and so forth. You never know what the question really is finally. Maybe in this case, it's okay to proceed in this manner, but in instances where I've taken things off consent, I've had a hearing because there was always other questions that followed the question that followed the question. But if you consented to this, I support it.
Well, here's the thing. Number one, no one else asked to pull it off consent, so I assume no one else will have questions. But maybe they will. But this will also give the opportunity for all board members now to determine, still to pull it from consent, but with enough time for notice to the parties. Okay, so we will continue that hearing, Lake Arrowhead Community Services District, case number 6142-1, to Thursday, July 25th. And then I will call the only remaining case for today, which is South Coast AQMD versus D&D Disposal, Inc., doing business as West Coast Rendering Company, case number 3462-4. This is for a status report and possible modification of the standing order for abatement. And who is representing the executive officer today?
Daphne Sue.
Thank you, Ms. Sue. And who is representing D&D Disposal today?
Bill Gorman and my brother Vincent Gorman.
Thank you. And Mr. Gorman, can you restate your name and spell it for the record, and also just state your title?
Bill, B-I-L-L, Gorman, G-O-R-M-A-N, President, D&D Services, Incorporated.
Thank you. Before we begin, I'm going to ask anyone who wishes to testify, give evidence in today's proceedings, to please rise at this time to be sworn in. Mr. Gorman, would you, either you or your brother, you wish to give any testimony today?
I wasn't planning on it, but I'll rise and be sworn in just in case.
If you're going to make any statements, we probably would like him to be under oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Sue, would you like to give an opening today?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, members of the board. We are here today for a status update on D&D, a rendering facility in Vernon. D&D processes dead animals to make them into commodities. The purpose of Rule 415 is to reduce odors from rendering facilities. Facilities must wash down receiving areas, repair receiving areas to prevent standing water greater than 1 foot from accumulating, and processing materials or storing materials in a covered container within 4 hours for materials delivered at ambient temperature. There were several key items in order that D&D was required to do. 1, ensure transport vehicles are tarped. 2, wash down the receiving area twice a day and sweep water towards the sump. 3, repair asphalt in the receiving area. 4, reduce the amount of materials received, that is, materials from their poultry accounts. 5, provide records of unloading of materials and processing of materials. 6, provide a list of estimates of deliveries during cold and hot weeks. 7, process or store raw materials in covered containers within 4 hours of receipt. The district has seen at least one vehicle that has not been tarped. The vice president of D&D said they would buy tarps. Since then, the district has not seen a vehicle without tarps. D&D appears to have been washing down the receiving area and sweeping water towards their sump. D&D has repaired a portion of their receiving area, but cracks and potholes in the asphalt still remain. The district requests that D&D repair the remaining area by July 16th, 2019. That's 1 week from today. D&D has provided records indicating that they notified their poultry accounts that it must stop receiving poultry. District staff has not seen poultry delivered since June 28th, earlier than the deadline required in the order. The district has received records of materials and processing of such materials. The district received an estimate of deliveries from contract clients during cold and hot weeks from D&D, and the district has questions regarding these estimates because the total number differs from other estimates previously given. During the latest inspection on July 5th, 2019, it appears that D&D has been processing or storing materials in a timely manner. The district will be calling Mr. Dylan Harris, a district inspector, to testify today. Thank you.
And are you seeking any modification today? Is the July 16th date, is that a modification you're seeking?
Yes, that would be.
And that's the only modification?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gorman, would you like to give a brief opening statement of your position at this time?
The only statement I'd like to make is that we've been doing our best to comply with the orders issued by South Coast Air Quality Management District. I think Ms. Sue's recitation of, or summary of the facts appears to be accurate, and I think most of the deficiencies have been taken care of. My only issue is with this July 16th paving deadline. I'd like a couple more weeks.
And at the appropriate time, we'll ask you to explain why, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gorman. Ms. Sue, your first witness, please.
Mr. Harris, would you please state and spell your name for the record?
Dylan Harris, Dillon, Harris.
And what is your role here at the district?
I'm an air quality inspector.
And have you inspected the facility D&D?
Yes.
And can you tell us what dates you inspected the facility since the last hearing?
Yeah. The 19th, the 21st, the 22nd, the 25th, the 28th, and July 2nd, 3rd, and 5th.
Great. And if you would hold on a moment, I have some exhibits to hand out.
Sure.
Madam Clerk, am I correct that we are up to number 2? Okay, I have one. That's what I was looking at. Thank you. We have received multiple photographs, and they are all stapled together. And let's mark them, the whole packet, as exhibit number 2. And then we'll mark each one as A. The second one is 2B. Third one is 2C. Fourth one as 2D, as in dog. The fifth one is 2E. The sixth is 2F. And then the last one is 2G. And you may proceed.
Mr. Harris, when you were present at the facility, did you see vehicles entering the facility?
Yes.
On at least one occasion, have you seen a vehicle that was not tarped?
On one occasion, yes.
And what did you do when you saw that the vehicle was not tarped?
I spoke with Mr. Gorman and informed him of the rule, or reminded him of the rule, and he said that he would take care of that.
And Mr. Gorman, is that Mr. Vincent Gorman?
Mr. Vincent Gorman, yes.
Okay. And since you had that conversation with him, have you seen any other vehicles arrive not tarped?
No.
And have you, at your times at the facility, have you seen the facility being, the receiving area being washed down?
Yes.
And have you also seen staff members squeezing or pushing the any water into the sump?
Yes.
Okay. And let's turn to Exhibit 2. Turning to the last page, 2G. Can you describe this photograph?
This was a major repair that D&D did to the worst part of the receiving area asphalt. As you can see, it's about 15 by 20 feet or so.
Okay, and let's go back to, so Exhibit 2 appears to be a series of photographs. Did you take these photographs?
Yes.
Are these true and accurate pictures of the facility?
Yes.
Okay, and the district would like to enter these photographs into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Gorman, to them being admitted into evidence?
No.
Okay, then exhibits 2A through 2G are in evidence.
And turning to 2C, can you describe what we see here?
This is one of the minor patch jobs that the facility has started to do to fix more of the receiving area.
Okay, and do we still see any remaining cracks here?
Yeah, there's still a few areas of cracks and slight potholes.
And what date did you take this photograph?
On the 2nd of July,
And turning to the next page, 2D, and can you describe what we see here?
just the disrepair of the asphalt that's still in the receiving area.
Okay, and what date did you take this photograph?
On the 2nd of July as well.
Great, thank you very much for that. And let's talk about the reduction in the amount of materials received. Have you received any evidence that they have stopped receiving materials from their poultry accounts?
Yes,
And so have you seen a letter that they sent to their poultry accounts?
I did, yes.
And what did the letter say?
That they were going to stop receiving poultry from the companies in attachment 3, starting on the 28th of June.
And did you also see a declaration from somebody at D&D stating that they had sent those letters out to facilities?
I did, yes.
And who submitted the declaration?
I'm not sure who signed it. It was either Bill or Vince.
Okay, so either the president or vice president of D&D signed the document? Okay, and since June 28th, 2019, have you seen the facility receive any materials from their poultry accounts or large amounts of poultry materials?
No, I haven't seen any poultry be delivered.
Okay. And has D&D provided you records of how much materials that they were unloading at the site?
Yes,
Okay, and have they also provided records of when they processed these materials?
yes,
Okay, has D&D provided you a list of estimates for cold and hot weeks?
yes.
And looking at the total based on those estimates and prior totals that they had given the district, do those numbers match the total numbers of the materials that they are expecting to receive each week? Oh, okay.
I was not involved in that estimate conversation, so this
Okay.
is all that I have.
Okay, based on your understanding of materials that they receive each week, does this most recent estimate match to your prior understanding that you had back in June?
What are you asking?
Is this number of materials that D&D is expected to receive, is that higher or lower than the number that you thought that they would be receiving? Lower, okay. And what was the last date that you inspected D&D?
July 5th?
Okay, and at that time, did you see them process materials within 4 hours of receiving it or otherwise putting them in containers?
Yes.
Okay, and looking at Exhibit 2 again, the first page, 2A, can you describe what you see here?
This is some of the buildup of material that isn't able to be processed, so they're storing them in covered containers to comply with the order.
Okay, thank you for that. And let's go to page 2E of Exhibit 2. Can you describe what we see here in this photograph?
This is on the 3rd of July to ensure that the facility had complied with the 11 o'clock through 1:30, keeping the pit clear. Myself and Supervising Inspector Jeff Lloyd was at the facility at 11:15 p.m., and it can be observed that the pile was not clear of material.
And at around what time was this photograph taken?
11:15.
Okay, and turning to the next page, 2F, can you describe what's in this photograph?
The same thing, just we were standing on the street. We did not enter the facility, so the picture quality is not that good. So I tried to put 2 on there.
Okay, and this is the receiving area, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Mr. Gorman, do you have any questions for Mr. Harris?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I have a few. Mr. Harris, you gave us several dates of inspections, which is great. You really have been on top of it. Thank you for that. Did you, and on all of them, beginning June 19th and going through to July 5th, have you been consistently observing the processing and storing in a timely manner at the facility?
Well, that deadline wasn't due until the 3rd.
Okay, of July?
Correct.
Okay, and so you, did you or did you not?
So they've been processing as quickly as they can. As soon as the poultry stopped coming, the amount of materials that was in the pile was significantly reduced, and we've seen great improvement since then.
Okay. You mentioned that there was one vehicle that was not tarped. What date did you observe that vehicle?
That was on the 19th.
Okay, so, and since then, on all your other visits, you've seen no other vehicles that are not tarped?
Correct.
And can you refresh our recollection? The vehicles are owned by D&D?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, you showed us a picture, which is great, of some major paving of what you described as the worst cracking and potholing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say some of the worst. Now that more of the pile has been taken away, there is more areas that have been exposed that are in need of repair as well.
Okay.
But this was a major fix.
My question is, did you see, you showed us at the last hearing some photographs where the cracked and potholing pavement is of pooling of liquid material. Have you seen any of that, given that now the processing and storing is done in a timely manner? Have you seen any pooling of liquids?
There's still a bit of pooling, a little bit closer to the grinder.
And is that an area that is cracked?
It's hard to tell. It looks to be depressed a little bit, but I haven't seen it completely void of material, so I'm not quite sure.
And let me ask, you have here, you showed us 2C and 2D areas with some substantial cracks remaining. Have you observed any pooling in those areas? Is that the area you're talking about?
No, I was talking about a different area, but there has been slight pooling in 2D.
In 2D? Okay, thank you. And then, can you remind us, the last item that you were testifying with regard to was the nighttime photographs. Can you remind us which, if you know, which part of the order that referred to?
Yeah, that was number 4 on page 8. Oh, I'm sorry, number 6 on page 8.
Right. And so you're saying that they are not, in those pictures, they are not in compliance with that?
Correct.
Okay. And which dates were those pictures taken?
That was on July 3rd at approximately 11:15 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. Board members, any other questions for Mr. Harris? Ms. Verdugo Peralta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In watching the hearing and looking at all of the submitted materials, I had 2 questions, actually, for the inspector. Have there been any more complaints since the hearing, the last hearing?
Just for clarification, complaints from whom?
From the public?
Very good.
So the sector inspector, as of Friday, gave me numbers that since the 19th, 28 complaints have come from the public that were rendering odor related. None of them were confirmed to be any one facility, but since the 19th, there have been 28, and since the 1st of January, 62.
Can you remind us how many rendering facilities there are in the immediate area?
There's 5.
Which I was aware of, yeah. But I just wanted to know since the last hearing, if there had been any complaints.
28.
Okay. My other question, in listening to the webcast, there was a question in regards to submitting the permit but without payment of the fees. And what was the deadline on that, and has that been completed? Because in the webcast, there was a request to have that expedited.
Right, so the deadline is still the 16th of July. It's just that now fees must be included to expedite the process. So the date itself hasn't changed for the due date.
Okay. And can we ask what the total amount that will be due on the 16th?
I don't believe that the inspector will know, but you can ask. But usually, the inspectors don't know that answer.
Okay, thank you.
And you raise a good point, Ms. Verdugo-Peralta. I forgot to mention publicly during the hearing that neither you nor Dr. Bernstein were present at the last hearing, but obviously you've indicated that you have both watched the hearing and I assume prepared by reading the papers. Is that correct? Okay, so you're prepared to hear the case today? Yes, I am. Okay, and Dr. Bernstein, same question for you, and if you could write it and talk into your microphone.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Did you have questions, Mr. Balagopalan?
Yes, Mr. Dillon, Mr. Harris, all right. Let's go through the order and condition. There are, I think, 14 conditions there. Can you list the ones that have, it's not going through each one of them, the ones that have not been complied with, and we go down one.
So that have not, you'd like me to skip the ones that have been?
Yes, just focus on the one that have not been complied with.
On page 8, number 6, the not having any raw materials present on site between 11 and 1:30. Number 9 on page 9, that's partially complied with. As you can see in the pictures, repair has been made, but further repair is necessary. And that's it.
Okay. Now, you mentioned there were 28 complaints since the last hearing,
Yes.
but they were not confirmed as emitting from this facility.
No.
What other rendering facilities is nearby this facility?
Baker is right across the street. Farmer John and Coltree are a couple blocks away to the west, and Darling is also in the vicinity.
And do you know where the approximate location of the people who were complaining?
Yeah, one sec. So the sector inspector checked Boyle Heights, East LA, Maywood, Vernon, East LA proper, East Huntington Park, West Commerce. And he said that the wind shifted sometime during March, given that the complaint shifted from Maywood, Bell, East Huntington Park to the South Boyle Heights, East LA, and Western Commerce area.
So if you were to classify where the location of this facility is, where would you say in reference to those areas?
Those areas surround D&D.
Those areas around D&D, yeah. Okay. Do you know if, even though it's not in the order, I know at the last hearing you presented pictures showing some of the end products were just stored out in the open and not tarped. Have you since then seen that have been removed, or is this still the situation?
For a time, it was removed because they found a buyer for the materials, but that has since gone away, so the materials is continuing to pile up, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can you remind us, is there a rule that requires those piles to be covered?
No.
No, okay, that's what I thought. Any other questions for Mr. Harris? Senator, do you have questions?
I have a question.
Senator, would you like Mr. Gorman to ask his question first?
Be my guest.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Harris, the neighborhoods that you described as being around D&D, where the odor complaints are coming from, would you also say that those same neighborhoods are around the other 4 rendering facilities?
Yes, I would.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Gorman? Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Senator, your questions.
Except for requirement number 9 on page 8, is that the most significant one that they're not in compliance with? Or-
Yeah. Yes, and hopefully they can be in compliance with number 6 on a daily basis.
Oh, there's a time frame there. So, Mr. Gorman is just asking that he requesting a 2 weeks extension for item number 9. He didn't ask any requirement for extension for the other items specified in the order.
Are you asking Mr. Gorman? He's not
No,
testifying.
I'm just saying that's what he's asking, and you're aware of that.
He stated earlier that he would like more time, yes?
We had a hearing here on, and I could ask Mr. Gorman a question, on June 18th this year. We had a hearing on this matter, and that's where the order was. And D&D did not appear. You served him, is that correct, Ms. Harris?
I served him what?
For the hearing that took place on June 18th.
No, the inspector does not do the
Right,
service.
right, but you participated in the hearing here.
I was at the hearing, yes.
There was evidence that the Gorman, that D&D was served with an order to appear. Were you aware of that?
Yeah.
Did you have the occasion to discuss it with Mr. Gorman or anyone in the company as to why they did not appear?
They had other engagements going on that were unforeseen.
Other engagements, huh? All right, thank you.
And you can certainly ask Mr. Gorman that
That's right.
question. Any other questions for Mr. Harris?
I do have a follow-up. Oh, thank you.
Dr. Bernstein?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify on item 6, that was inspected on the 5th of July?
No, on the
regards to
3rd,
exhibit-
on the 3rd of July.
On the 3rd of July with regards to storing materials. Was there any explanation given why those materials were still being stored? I guess I'll be directing that to Mr. Gorman, I guess. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Balagopalan?
Mr. Harris, have you had occasion to go to any other rendering facilities? Have you inspected any other facilities?
Yeah, I have visited each of the 5 rendering facilities in the area.
recently, or when would you say you've been there?
Earlier this year.
And are they in compliance with the rule, or?
With Rule 415, yes, some are still struggling to finalize their permits for the permanent total enclosures. That's it.
But otherwise, they are moving forward
Correct.
to comply with 415.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Verdugo Peralta.
Madam Chair, I have more of a comment versus a question.
Comment should be saved for deliberation. If you have questions, though, this is the time we're collecting evidence.
I can wait.
Okay. Any other questions then for Mr. Harris?
None for him, but for,
Yes. Okay, thank you. Ms. Sue, do you have any other witnesses you wish to present?
No, I do not.
Okay, then I'm going to turn to Mr. Gorman. Mr. Gorman, at this time, if you have any statements you'd like to make, if you have any additional evidence you'd like to present, and also if you could address your concerns with regard to meeting the July 16th date to finish paving any cracks in the asphalt.
Our main concern with meeting the July 16th paving deadline is the same as we have for meeting the application fee deadline, which is financial. We have a payroll to get out today for over 40 employees, and I'm not quite sure we have the funds to make good on each and every one of those paychecks. On balance, if the district can allow more time for us to receive or get in more accounts receivables, then we've got a better chance of getting the paving done and getting the application fee paid, although we don't know what the exact current application fee is at this time. I heard something about $11,000, and I think the last thing I heard from my brother Vincent was $16,000. So would like some clarification on that. These are very difficult times, and I don't want to go into great detail as far as, you know, the main causes for them. However, the current trade war with China has disrupted a number of different commodity markets, and it's had a trickle-down effect that has hit us because we're the last stop before the landfill. So as far as the paving is concerned, even additional weeks would help. I don't think that the cracked pavement is any kind of a substantial odor source. And, you know, the application fee, I understand that does have to be paid. We'll do our best to get it paid, but I'd like to have a firm number so that we can hopefully get that paid sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Mr. Gorman. That's a very excellent question. And just so you know, we are an independent board. We're not actually part of the district proper. But I do believe perhaps Ms. Sue, since you're here, might be able to direct you to what appropriate, or Mr. Harris might be able to direct you to where you could go when the hearing is over to find out the exact amount, and perhaps to talk about, I don't know if payment plans are available, but we can definitely have someone direct you to that since you're here in person to find that out. Ms. Sue, do you have questions for Mr. Gorman?
I wanted to hand out another exhibit.
Thank you.
We've received a two-page email from Vince LG on June 9th, 2019, and we will make that exhibit, mark that as exhibit number 3. You may proceed.
Good morning. May I please have Mr. Vincent Gorman testify? Mr. Gorman, have you seen this email string before? Exhibit 3. Have you seen these emails before?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And
I'm sorry, but before you do this, since we're bringing on another witness, Mr. Gorman, can you please state your name, spell it for the record, indicate that you did take the oath today, and tell us your title?
Vincent Gorman, Vincent Gorman, Vice President, and I did take the oath.
Thank you. And is this a true and accurate copy of an email that you've seen?
Yes, it is.
Great. And did you send this email dated June 9, 2019?
Yes, I did.
Great. And are these numbers provided in the email? If you see below, it says your estimated pounds received excluding poultry accounts with numbers. Are these accurate estimates?
Yes, they are.
Great, thanks. And I have totaled these numbers up, and I come up with 335,330 pounds. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes.
Okay. And after the abatement order was entered, did you provide another handwritten, did you provide a handwritten estimate of numbers of barrels received from your contract clients?
My brother supplied that data, yes.
Okay. And for the estimates here on this email, is that only contract clients, or does that also include other clients?
I think it was both.
The email contains gross totals by day from everything.
And so that's both contract clients and non-contract clients?
That's correct.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Board members, questions for either Mr. Gorman or Mr. Gorman? Go ahead, Mr. Balagopalan, go ahead.
I'll ask Mr. Bill Gorman the question. So did you participate in the rulemaking process for this rule?
I went to several meetings, yes.
So you were aware that the rule was coming, and when it got adopted then, and the requirements in the rule?
I was aware that the rule was being adopted. I didn't know when exactly that was going to be, but when it finally was, yes, I was aware of that.
So when it was finally adopted, November 3rd, 2017, then you were aware of the requirements of the rule?
Correct.
And So you know that there are certain deadlines and certain things had to be done to come into compliance with the rule.
Yes, I knew that there were going to be deadlines.
And one of the deadline, I think, was the submitting of the permit application was 12 months after November 3rd, 2017. And I believe you had submitted an application without fees, correct, in sometime in 2018 or 2019?
I submitted those, yes, that is correct, without the application fee.
Fees. And when the South Coast AQMD returned that package to you?
Yes, they did.
And did they indicate what the fee should be at the time?
At the time, it was just a little over 11,000. I subsequently received a telephone call from a member of the engineering group stating that, oh, we noticed that there's this type of a filter media involved in your application fee. That will be additional funds in the fee for our choice of a filtering media. We chose a graphite, carbon graphite composite box, and apparently that's fell into a category that required more money.
Do you know how many applications you have to submit total?
3.
3. And these are for the control systems?
That is
essentially?
correct.
Okay. And one of the requirements is after you're receiving material now out in the open and within 4 hours you're storing it in closed containers, that requirement is going to go away after your permit is approved, right? What are your plans to enclose it? And do you have the funds to do that, to comply with the rule requirement?
Our intent is to comply with the rules of 415 in having not only the raw material receiving area covered, but also the wastewater scrubber line covered and the rendering plant enclosed. That's the intent. We have since 2014, when the Rule 415 was a proposal, since 2014, we have always voiced our concerns that this is going to be extremely expensive, it's going to be very disruptive, and could we have changes made to the proposed Rule 415? But that was not met with much success. So ever since 415, yeah, we were aware of what the requirements were, as were the other rendering plants in our immediate area. To the company, all of them were more or less saying the same things that we were saying, is that this is really going to pose quite a financial burden. They were complaining of such a thing. Well, we're the smallest rendering plant in the group. So if it was going to hurt them, for sure it's going to hurt us. But being where we are today, the dropping of many of our accounts has left us with a manageable, workable tonnage total to abide by this abatement order requirement. If I could back the clock up a little bit about the July 3rd photograph of, there was material on the ground after 11 p.m. and before 1:30 a.m. that fell into the 4th of July holiday period, short-staffed, and not my failure in explaining to the end of that shift. You can't have anything on the ground. It needs to be put into a cooker, albeit we look for a 10,000 pound load. That would have been much less than 10,000 pounds, but I was not clear enough to them to say it can't be there at the end of your shift. They're well aware of that now.
So that is no longer an issue.
No, it is not.
Now, as far as meeting the 415 requirements, enclosing the receiving area, the wastewater treatment, and I think Mr. Bill Gorman mentioned the financial difficulties. Do you still plan to do what is required to meet 415?
That is our intent. The reality still exists of a market for the product to get more revenue into the facility to abide by all the requirements of 415. There's, like my brother was mentioning about the embargoes and the problems and the difficulties out there in trade, our user base of the material historically has been in the export market. More revenue was able to be gleaned from exporting material than any usage that we were scrambling to find domestically. And we're still in that same situation. We have a small fertilizer user who from time to time purchases the material, and we are again working with a different brokerage group for exporting the material at much less money than would be needed by the company now to meet all of the different requirements, not only for the abatement order, but for Rule 415 in the long run. So we're still in the same financial boat, looking for a solution. I have requested information about payment plans. Some of those requests have been heard, and I am on a payment plan for some of the fees and fines that the company is currently under. It would be wonderful if I could just say, you know, I wish the board would consider just wiping out all the existing today, the 9th of July, the fines and the fees that are required of me. The likelihood then of being in full compliance to 415 is a light at the end of the tunnel for us, but not under the current financial demands.
Mr. Gorman, and we should be clear, we are a hearing board of limited jurisdiction. So what you're hoping to hear from the board, we could not grant to you. We don't have the power or authority or jurisdiction to eliminate fees of the district because we are independent hearing board.
Thank you. I have heard that very same thing from not only the engineering group, but from the enforcement group, and it didn't seem like whomever I would approach would have any knowledge of funds that might be available for. But that was it. I just wanted to back the clock up to the July 3rd and how that's been remedied. And it is appreciated that the July 16th relative to more time for the repairs. That's helpful. Thank you.
Are there interim measures you can take to do the repair instead of paving it completely? Are there other measures you can take to fill the gap as an interim measure?
Yes, there are, and we do that about every 24 hours. Take money out of petty cash and run down to Home Depot and buy sacks of asphalt and ready-crete and utilize the additional time that the employees would have by virtue of the volume lessening that they have to handle and process now. They have the time to continue to do more crack repair.
Right. And so that's ongoing.
Yes, it is.
And a question I can, oh, yes. We saw at the last hearing, material stored out in the open, you had, not covered because of the failure of, I think it was if I remember correctly, the press,
That is correct, the press.
the press. And it has since then been repaired.
That is correct, it is repaired.
And how old are those presses? Are they, have you done any capital improvements? Or what is the likelihood of another event like that happening? And again,
Yeah, that's a difficult question to answer. Much of the material, much of the mechanisms that are utilized in the rendering facility, a batch facility, they are old, they do wear out, and they're multiple pieces to them. There are shafts, there are transmissions, there's gearing, there are bearings. Things do wear out and fail. We do have maintenance to minimize that best we can, but all of the components at a rendering facility it's like one continuous chain. It doesn't much matter which link breaks. If a link in a chain breaks, it affects everything. So we don't want any downtime on any of the components.
are they plans to replace or modernize some of the equipment you have?
Constantly, yeah. There's shells for the cookers, and there's transmission and gearing and motors for the press and the cookers and the screw conveyors. And all of that is constantly ongoing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bill Gorman, you mentioned that the 16th is not a doable deadline. I thought I heard something different from Mr. Vincent Gorman, but can either of you tell us what is, in your mind, a date by which the cracks and potholes in the asphalt can be fixed? And is it, as Mr. Vincent Gorman had mentioned, is it something that can be done in a rolling manner?
Yeah, the 2 weeks, like I had mentioned, I'm appreciative of that. Any extension of time, I'm very appreciative of. The other thing is that if I repair all the cracks that I see per 415E6, that's the drop area where the raw material hits the ground. Those areas are noticeably patched because that's where the raw material hits the ground. There are areas leading up to that that are still visibly not completely repaired. Well, if the intent is 415E6, then I've done considerable improvement on making those repairs. There will always be, from the time you park your car and get out of your car and you could look down on the ground, you're going to see a crack, you're going to see a this or that. It has nothing to do with the pit area. I don't know whether I'm being clear
Well-
or not.
Well, there are two pictures, photographs, area 2C, I'm sorry, in Exhibit 2, 2C and 2D, that Inspector Mr. Harris mentioned that, and took a photograph of, having significant cracks, and in particular, having observed in 2D some pooling, and on at least one inspection of materials. couple of questions. Number one, do you have an estimate of what percentage of your facility still has sizable cracks and potholes similar to what we're seeing in 2C and 2D?
No. There's been for a long time a lot of different areas of the entire facility that have been blacktopped. Not every place has been blacktopped. But how much, what percentage? No. My concern is in front of the drop area where the raw material goes.
Okay, and that still needs to be paved?
Yeah, from these photos till today, which I'm sure Dylan, when he swings by again, he'll get a more recent look at it, and then two people can see the same thing. One sees a big improvement, and the other still sees some faults with it. So I just think that hopefully his eyes and my eyes can agree upon it's a dramatic improvement.
Okay, so since Mr. Harris has been there to inspect, there has been additional filling of cracks and paving?
Yes, there has.
Okay, and that's in particular in front of the drop area?
That is correct.
Okay. What about 2C and 2D? Can those areas be fixed by the date of July 16th that has been requested by the district?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
that's already long since fixed.
Wait,
Which
That
one?
is, yeah.
oh, okay.
Which one?
That's all.
D,
2D is the same area, different view as the very last photo. The very last photo, and the area that 2D is on is same area.
Okay, so you're saying both both the views we're seeing in 2C and 2D have been remedied as of the last photo 2G?
No, to see that extension of the crack going towards Bandini Boulevard, away from the viewer straight ahead. There's still areas there that can be filled in, and by the 16th, they will be filled in.
Okay,
The 16th is the date that also carried with it the fees that had to accompany the permits. That's
Correct.
what my brother was referring to, more so than the crack repair.
okay. So is there any areas of visible cracks that would fall within Rule 415 that you believe you are unable to fill or correct by the 16th of July? Okay.
No.
Okay, and so you're saying today, I know, back to Mr. Bill Gorman, your testimony was, and neither of you can answer, but your testimony was that you know now that you will not be able to meet condition number 8, which is the permit with expedited processing by the 16th of July. Is that correct?
that is correct.
And do you have an alternate date by which you wish to present to the board?
My alternative would be for the end of July, the very end, last day, whether it's the 30th or 31st.
Okay. Thank you, and that's for all the financial reasons that you stated, as well as your need to discuss further with someone at the district whether or not there are any kind of payment options available and what the
Correct.
total amount is.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Board members, additional questions? Senator?
Mr. Gorman, you testified that the trade war has an adverse effect on the operation of your business.
Yes.
To what extent?
The best way to describe it is that historically, our end product, which is the commodity, is called dry rendered tankage. DRT is the acronym. Everybody calls it dirt. Historically, that has had a commodity value of over $200 a ton. For the last year, okay, going back farther, the commodity value for the dry rendered tankage is about $60 a ton. So it's fallen by 2/3, over 2/3. Our natural gas bill, our electrical bill, those have all gone up. And so most of the contracts that we have for the cities and counties that we service, for the sanitary pickup and disposal of their dead animals, those are long-term, multi-year contracts. I can't, because of a change in our overall economy or the commodity markets, tell LA County or Riverside County or San Bernardino County or Orange County that, I'm sorry, I can no longer honor the price that our contract calls for. I have to double the price. No, I'd be inviting lawsuits left and right. So when your commodity value drops by over 2/3 and you're unable to increase your service fee, your contract price, to make up for that, well, then you end up losing an average of $65,000 a month. And that's what we've been doing for the past year, is losing $65,000 a
For
month.
3 years.
Not for all 3 years, but since the trade war, I think that started in August of 2018.
And towards the end of 2018.
Yeah, it was August of 2018.
I thought your brother said that
It,
you started losing money based on the operation as far back as 3 years ago.
That is
Yeah.
correct, and the losses coming from increase in all the utilities costs, water costs. It's expensive to bring in, and it's very expensive going out. The water sanitation fees and such skyrocketing, natural gas costs skyrocketing, fuel costs skyrocketing, the diesel and such for the trucks. There's all kind of increases in the operating costs for the rendering plant. Cooker shells, 20 years ago, they'd cost $20,000. Today, they cost $60,000. The metal is the metal. I have no idea why in the devil.
All right.
It's more or less, it's really gotten out of balance, the expenses versus revenues in the last year.
So you had substantial income 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yes,
When was the surface, when was the road last surfaced? Do you have cracks at that time?
Oh yeah, we do crack repairs. 2 years ago, we started in the mill area. There's big areas of the plant that has been repaired prior to any abatement requirement.
So you maintain it continuously or consistently? You have a record of when you're doing this? Maintain the road surface?
I don't keep,
we should have taken pictures and brought them. but
Yeah.
we didn't think of that.
yeah.
Okay. As of today, how many linear feet, in your opinion, that needs to be resurfaced?
To comply with Rule 415,
That's the question.
probably, what, 20 by 40 again?
Maybe another 20 by 40. Small area.
Linear,
Well, I could give you square feet, linear feet, you know, 20 linear feet wide by 40 linear feet long.
that's not much.
No, it
No?
is not.
Still thousands.
It is just short of $5,000.
For the total amount.
Yeah. I know.
That's not a lot of money for that operation. How many people are working there now?
It's, what is it, 43? But that includes, we have a transfer station in Fresno County and a transfer station in San Diego County. So,
And you're saying $5,000 could do the job, is what you're saying?
yeah,
And you need 2 more weeks to surface those roads, and you have $5,000.
Well, now they probably wouldn't be able to fit us into their calendar. You know, there's a lot of people that are now in need of,
yeah, with the earthquakes.
with repairs and such, but
Are you familiar with the webcast? What we do here sometime as board members, as a board operation, is viewed on webcast. Are you aware of that?
Webcasting?
Television? Like a television.
No.
So you didn't watch us last on June 18th?
No, we thought our appearance wasn't, you know, mandated. We thought we had come to terms as far as a stipulated order was concerned with Attorney Sue, well before that hearing. I still don't know where this or when this order to appear was served on us, and which one of us actually was handed the order to appear at
Yeah,
that last hearing.
a mandatory appearance, no.
On May 23rd, you were served by Mr.
Does
Fraser.
it say which one of us?
Mr. Vincent Gorman.
And I acknowledged that and signed something attesting to it or something?
Telling you when to appear.
Well,
That's your fault.
then it's my fault.
Okay. You're asking for 2 weeks in order to complete the order.
That would be 2 weeks for the payment of the application fee and the cost of the paving, provided we can get the paving booked, that job booked and completed by the end of this month.
I can see from the photograph that you're essentially in compliance with the order, except for a few exceptions. And I just want to know that in the future, you'll make a good faith effort to be totally in compliance. I was concerned by the fact that you were not here last time and did not appear. And you were served, Mr. Vincent. So
I was in a different courtroom at that time, but it was not this. That day, that was why I did not appear, not realizing that I was ordered to appear.
you noticed to appear.
Yeah, notice to appear. And my fault, my ignorance, I've made a lot of,
Did you notify the district that there was a conflict?
no.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
I just wanted to just jump in one more time because I thought we had ironed out the date for the paving of the areas that are still required to be paved for Rule 415 to be able to meet that by July 16th. But I believe we now have heard some additional and maybe conflicting testimony. do you believe, either of you or both of you, do you believe you'll be able to complete that paving by July 16th?
Crack repair by July 16th, yes.
So to be in compliance,
Paving,
okay. Then let me
That's
not miss.
different,
Let me not
yeah.
misstate. Crack repair as required to be in compliance with 415.
agreed,
Okay. You believe you can do that by July 16th?
yes.
Okay. Including scheduling anyone who would have to do that work?
Well, that's all the paving. There's a difference between crack repairing and paving.
Okay.
There are areas of the rendering plant that have crack repair done to them, and there are areas of the rendering plant that have been paved.
Okay.
The paved is the neat, tidy, crisp, clean looking.
Let me ask you let me read to you. Okay, so condition number 9 of the standing order was June 22nd, but let's insert the date July 16th. By July 16th, respondent shall repair asphalt in the raw materials area pursuant to Rule 415E6. Can you be in compliance with that if we change that to be July 16th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, board members, for either Mr. Bill or Mr. Vincent Gorman? Okay. Oh, sorry, Mr. Balagopalan.
So besides the July 16 for the repair, are you also asking for extension of time to submit the permit application? Or you need to know the fees first before you decide that?
Well, if it turns out to be 16,000 or 11,000, I would still like 2 weeks additional time to get in accounts receivables so that we can afford to write that check, however much the amount may be.
So an additional, to the end of July?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Senator.
Do you ever consider having a preventative maintenance program as related to the surface of the roads? A lot of heavy loads are going in there, and you should be paving almost on a consistent basis periodically.
In a perfect world, yes, that would be good. We're doing our best. We have, like my brother mentioned, many areas that we took it upon ourselves to repave.
Of course, that's part of your business operation.
Right, exactly. So what we're going around about is approximately a 20-foot by 40-foot area where the dead animals are offloaded from the trucks and staged before they enter our processing system. And my brother is confident that we can be in compliance with 415 as to that particular patch of cracked pavement by the 16th of this month.
When that particular site of cracked pavement is repaired, will there be any other specific cracks that are not paved at that time that you may be aware of?
Yeah, there are other areas that would also be in need of repair, but they're nowhere near the drop zone.
Yeah, it's not within the raw material receiving area,
Yeah.
which seems to be the focus of this.
So the district has no concern about that area? Is that what you're saying?
About areas other than where the dead animals are offloaded.
Yeah,
District-
Rule 415 states it's in the raw materials receiving area where dead animals touch the floor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Either one of you, I had a question. If we look at the pictures, can you identify which is that area? Is it 2B or 2C, or which is the area we're talking about, the 20 by 40 feet that has to be paved?
That would be 2C, and it would be furthest from the bottom of the picture about halfway across the picture on towards Bandini Boulevard. Okay. This was already done.
Yeah, this is like a before picture
Correct.
of the
The last
photo.
picture.
So 2C is the before picture? I'm trying to understand which area we're talking about that still needs to be repaved.
Okay. 2C
2C, okay.
is what remains to be paved.
All
Or
of what we see in
repair.
2C
Or
or?
repaired.
Repair.
Thank you.
okay.
Yeah, just to be
Repaired
clear,
or
repaired.
paved, right. 2D is a before picture
Okay.
of the last page, which
2G,
is an
okay.
after picture, I believe.
Yeah, that's the
And
way I see
maybe
it.
Dylan can elaborate on that.
And let's do that while we're on this picture, because I see that the district has a different take.
Yeah, so I took both of these pictures at 336 on 7.2. It's the same area, it's just a slightly different view. If you see the barrels on 2C in the top right of the photo, and then on 2D, you see them in the bottom left. So it's just a slightly different angle, but it's the same day, same time. And that was on 7.2.
I'm sorry, are you saying that 2C and 2D are the same area?
Slightly different views of the same area.
Okay. And then what about 2G? Is that an after?
2G, that was done on the 21st of June. That was the major repair that they did on the left side of the pile. So if you look in that photo where all the animals are in the background, so any area like that has animals touching the ground would need to be repaired. So 2C and 2D are example photos of what the asphalt looks like still, to the last of my knowledge, in the receiving area.
Okay, so just to be clear, in your mind, given the dates on which you took these photos and the areas which they represent, 2G is not an after photo of either 2C or 2D?
That's correct.
Okay.
How can that be?
I don't know.
I don't
I don't know.
understand.
The 2C and 2D is to the right of the brand-new asphalt that was laid.
So if we're looking at 2G, if we're looking to the right of the photograph, is that what you're talking about? That area there that looks like there's still cracks remaining under
Correct.
the tape?
Yeah, just on the right edge of the photograph.
Right, so those are example photos of what would be just on the right side of the photograph of 2G.
Did that answer your questions?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, board members? Okay. Either Mr. Gorman or Mr. Gorman, did you have anything else you wish to present to the board at this time? Thank you.
Not I.
I have no other comment either.
Thank you. Okay. Why don't we take a break, and we'll come back, and I'll ask if there's any member of the public. We'll take closing statements, and then the board will deliberate. So we'll take a sorry.
Is it possible, Ms. Sue, to get an estimate of the fees during the break from the engineer?
Yes, I already have the estimates.
Oh, okay.
Oh, great. Okay. Do you want to give it to the parties on the break? Okay. So we'll take a 15-minute break. We'll be back on the record at 10:45. We're off the record. Okay, we're back on the record. And I wanted to first just ask anyone in the public if they wish to be heard today, and I see no one. Should we close the hearing and go to closing? Is there anything else? Okay.
I would like
Ms.
to enter into evidence Exhibit 3, if that has not.
Yeah, we'll get to that in 1 second. Mr. Gorman, any objection to Exhibit 3, the email being entered into evidence?
No objection.
No objection.
Okay, Exhibit 3 is also in evidence. Do we need any additional testimony given the information with regard to fees?
That would be up to Mr. Gorman if they would like to discuss the fees.
And any additional statements you wish to make, or anything else you wish for us to consider with regard to, now that you have information with regard to fees?
Well, it's my understanding that this board added that language regarding expedited fees to the proposed stipulated order. And so if that is correct, we'd like to ask that the portion of the stipulated order requiring expedited fees be removed from the stipulated order and just regular fees, because we're talking about a, $4,600 difference.
That was my question. Okay. Board will take that in consideration. Ms. Sue, do you have any questions or on fees or anything for Mr. Gorman?
No.
Anyone else have any questions before we close the hearing?
Sorry, Madam Chairman. So what is the actual fee before the expedited amount?
$10,530.
That's the fee itself, is that correct?
That is correct,
And expedite is an additional 4,600?
totaling $15,189.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Any other questions before we close the hearing? Senator?
That's the $5,000 required, that they need to resurface the road.
We can discuss that in deliberations. Do you have any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Ms. Sue, your closing statement, please.
Hello. The district does not dispute that there was improvement with regards to the receiving area of the facility. The purpose of the abatement order is to get the facility to comply with Rule 415E5. Rule 415E5 states in part, where raw rendering materials are unloaded and touch the ground outside of an enclosure shall be patched, repaired, or repaved as necessary to prevent standing water or puddles with a surface area greater than 1 square foot from accumulating.
You meant E6.
Yes, E6.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you. And as for the permit application, Mr. Gorman is correct. The proposed stipulated order did not seek processing expedited fees as part of that stipulation. I also would like to remind the hearing board, as per Rule 415 Part D, all the permit applications were due on November 3rd, 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to either Mr. Gorman for their closing, just a couple questions. Are you, so you're still seeking the modification of condition 9 to read July 16th, 2019? That is with regard to repairing asphalt. That's for you, Ms. Sue. Sorry.
I saw you looking at Mr. Gorman for a second. Yes, if you would change that to July 16, 2019.
And are you opposed to or in agreement with the requested modification by respondent to change condition number 8 to July 31st, 2019 for financial reasons?
We have some concern given that the original due date was November 3rd, 2018.
And do you have a position with regard to the removal of expedited processing?
We did not oppose the removal of expedited processing.
Okay. And one other question, do you request an additional status hearing?
No, we do not.
We do not. Okay, thank you. Either Mr. Vincent, Mr. Bill Gorman, would either of you like to make a final statement, closing statement?
Not I.
No, I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Let me ask you as part of the closing statement, if the expedited processing were removed from condition number 8, would you be able to submit a completed application with fees by July 16th, or would you still require the end of the month?
It would really help if we got till the end of the month.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, board members, Ms. Verdugo Peralta, would you like to begin deliberation?
No, can we ask, you ask some questions? Can we ask questions?
I just meant as part of the closing, what they're asking for, but yes, did you have? Sorry, Senator, you had a question? We did close the hearing, but I assume we have 3 members who would open it back up. Is that correct?
Oh, I thought you were asking questions also. Was it open or not open?
It's not open. I mean, but we will reopen it. It's now open.
No. Now, my question is, if they're not asking for a status report in the future, what if they're reporting to the district they're not in compliance beyond the times, dates that's been stipulated to, then what?
Well, that's a question for us to answer, but we can impose an additional status hearing if we choose to.
If they're not in compliance?
But the district is not asking for it. Oh, I'm saying we could do it now.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, did you have any other questions for? Okay. Ms. Verdugo Peralta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have some comments. I grew up not too far from that area, and on a good day, we could attest where Vernon was. And I'm aware of the fact, because I have done commercial and industrial audits out there, that it is a small, less than 300 population city of residents. However, it's the surrounding cities that are affected by the odors. And I know that it's a cumulative fact that they're coming from not just one, but all 5, and then again, some other businesses as well. So that being said, it doesn't remove the responsibility of each of the companies to do whatever they can to reduce those odors, especially now that there's that rule. However, my concern with the rule is the fact that the unintended consequences and results have reduced this particular company from being able to earn more revenue because they had to meet Rule 415, and therefore remove the ability to process the poultry, which I don't know how much percentage of your revenue that was, but regardless, it's still revenue. The other fact I wanted to discuss was when you talk to the air quality, whether it's inspector or whoever is going to be the person that you're going to discuss the fees with, I don't know whether you fall into the federal guidelines of a small business, but I would ask them that and discuss that with them. My other concern was the fact that you did not attend the last hearing. For whatever reason it was, I think the fact that you're not communicating with the AQMD, whether it's the inspectors or the people who are going to be imposing the fees, that there needs to be between you and the AQMD that communication so that you are fully aware of what amount is going to be requested of you so that you can plan for those fees. It is a cost of doing business and obviously needs to be budgeted within your revenue streams and cost to run your business. So that being said, it still is the responsibility of the company to come into compliance and to do so within a timely manner. I understand that there may be a challenge because of the loss of revenue. I agree with the staff that it would be reasonable to remove the expedited fee, but nonetheless, the fees are due. Whether that staff is going to and our board is going to agree whether they can pay it at the end of the month versus on the actual due date.
We don't have the, we don't have
don't
the
have that
ability
authority.
to say when they,
Okay.
only when they have to submit.
Okay.
And
But
pay
in
the
reference to the 2 weeks that they were asking
Right.
to go to the end of July is what I'm talking about.
That is our order, so
Right.
yes.
So that, I can go along with that. But like I said, it concerns me that any rule that comes before us, if there's some unintended consequences in the reduction of a company to earn revenue, I think we need to look at that and consider that in reference to the fact that we are going to or not going to give them those extra 2 weeks. So that's the end of my statement.
Thank you. I think having heard everything we've heard today, I think there is good cause to modify the order for abatement in a couple of ways. I think we were all very concerned, those of us who were on the board, I know there's been a turnover, we were very concerned at the last hearing, having seen what was presented by the inspector, having seen that there wasn't a lot of compliance at all with Rule 415 at that time, and given that we did not hear from the respondent at that time. Having you now have appeared before us and hearing your side always helps. And also, having now seen through the testimony of Mr. Harris and also through his photographs that significant progress has been made towards compliance with 415, I think I'm quite surprised and pleasantly surprised by that. So I think there's been some good faith effort to really come into compliance and only seeing just a couple of issues that still remain. I do agree that we need to consider financial capacity to some extent when we're picking dates, which is why it's always good to have the respondent present so that the respondent can tell the board of its constraints. So we can consider that in deliberations. We certainly cannot exempt a facility. And I think we've seen very good reasons why 415 exists, including the complaints by the nearby communities and how that shifts with the wind. And so I think 415 has very good reasons for being. But regardless, compliance will have to be done because it does exist and we cannot exempt anyone from it. But I do, with that said, I think we did see significant paving that was done, and so I feel hearing from the facility that by July 16th, they can complete what was required in condition number 9 with regard to repair of the asphalt that is necessary for rule compliance, that I could find good cause to extend that to July 16th. I think it's a difficult question with regard to condition 8 and the expedited processing in addition to moving the date. As Ms. Sue pointed out, we did hear last time that that is well overdue, the application, and that it was due on November 3rd of last year. And that's why the board placed expedited processing in this order. First of all, we did not hear from respondent, and also we wanted to do a little bit of catch-up. But hearing the amounts of money that are involved and hearing the financial issues involved, and seeing that I believe that that there has been some good faith compliance, I would be willing to find good cause to remove expedited processing and to make that date July 31st. But I would want to see a return date to make sure that that date was complied with. Mr. Balagopalan, you have more to add?
Yeah, and I think at the last, it was, I proposed the requirement for the expedited permitting only because the initial timeline was missed. The applications were submitted, but with no fees, they were rejected. Had every opportunity to resubmit the application, but the facility did not resubmit the application at that time. And also, requirements in the rule are hinged upon the date when the permit to construct is issued. The longer the permit to construct takes to get issued, the longer the delay in the requirements for the wastewater treatments. 12 months after the permit to construct is issued. For the enclosures, 24 months after the permit to construct is issued. So so I wanted to put that burden on the agency also to issue the permit to construct in a quick manner. Otherwise, it could take statutorily 6 months, but it could take 9 months or so. With the requirement for expedited permitting, I think that'll be fast track, and then it puts the burden on the facility to come into compliance in a quick manner instead of even delaying further. And so that's the reason why I had recommended at that time the board agreed, for that provision to request expedited for the application. And the other, and I appreciate the fact that the facility has done all the measures, but those were requirements that were in the rule that should have been complied when the rule was adopted, the odor management plan. All of those were not been done until they were put on this order, until they got the NOV. So, and I think it helps with, again, I think everybody has said, having you come and present the difficulties you're having in the hardship and the economic situation helps, but it does not detract from the fact that there are timelines and requirements in the rule that were not being complied with until the district took the step to issue the order. So I'm okay with extending the time to submit the application to the end of the month, but I think we should keep the expedited only because it puts everybody on track to issue the permit quickly, and then all the timelines that are in the rule kicks in 24 months, 12 months, because it's after the permit to construct is issued. I'm just concerned sometimes the delays can even further exacerbate the situation because it'll take even longer before they come into final compliance with the rule.
Anyone have thoughts on that or anything else? Senator?
D&D has been in business for a long period of time. They understand what the requirements are that's imposed on them by AQMD. And they didn't voluntarily attempt to comply until they received the order. Notwithstanding the fact that they received the order by affidavit we have here, Mr. Vincent, didn't even call the district to say why it was not going to appear. That's ignoring the duties and responsibility of this district, which has been established by the state of California that they are be overseers for pollution in this district. So we all have a duty to perform here, and yours as well as ours and others. And my concern is that the expedited fee, if it's removed, then you can use that money that we're going to be charged for expedited fee, which is about $5,000, to resurface this road right away. There's been no reason why it should not be done, and if it's not done, how do we know that it's not done unless we put a date in here that they are being compliance bar and they are going to adhere to the date and notify the district that it's done? And if they fail to notify the district that it's been done, shouldn't it come back to the board for reconsideration or review? That's what I would think. We want you to know that we want to help you, but we also want you to know that you got to make an effort to be in compliance. I mean, people live near that site. I mean, we have one board member saying, hey, it's a bad deal from the standpoint of odor. They have first-hand knowledge of what's going on there that's wrong. And you heard the statement, please try and be in compliance. I don't mind giving you another helping hand, but my God, I don't want to see you again on this issue and say you're not in compliance. Understood?
Dr. Bernstein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You pretty much summarized exactly what I was going to say. My impression is that you've made a good faith effort to come into compliance. It's unfortunate that it took an action by this board to motivate that action, but nevertheless, hearing about the current financial situation and what's happening in your industry, I'm so inclined to extend those dates on order number 8 to the 31st and order number 9 to the 16th. I'm also inclined to waive any expedited fees for processing, but I agree with the senator that hopefully that money will be enable you to get things done in a more expeditious fashion to in fact come in compliance. I also think that we should have a follow-up. I'm sorry what that protocol is, Madam Chair, what that would be, but just to make sure that everyone is in fact in compliance.
That would be to, right now, currently, we had a condition number 13, which is on page 9, and that was for today's hearing of July 9th, and it would be to just simply set another status and modification hearing for sometime probably in August, just to make sure we're on top of this
I think that would be prudent.
We could do that as early as August 1st. I'd like to hear a little more from Mr. Balagopalan with regard to, I'm with you. I was with you on the expedited processing in the first place. There has been a significant delay, which means that delay is already built in, and then, of course, there's all the time of permitting. But when I see the price tag in terms of the permitting itself, which I understood was maybe 3 different, but regardless, the total cost was $10,500. Almost, the expedited fees are almost half of that. And then given, we heard, obviously, there's the cost to fix the asphalt, as the senator pointed out. There was estimates of about $5,000 perhaps for that, so it would pay for that. And we also heard maybe some other fines that need to be covered by this facility. And so I don't think we want to send them off with an inability to comply. Do you have any thoughts with regard to that?
You know, I don't think we can put it, ideally, I think the district is required to issue the permit within 6 months after the application is deemed complete. But it tends to take sometime longer. You know, it could be 9 months, it could be a year. And typically in the expedited program, it's issued much sooner. So I think the sooner the application is issued, then the timelines kick in, the year and the 2 years to come into compliance 415. If we delay that, that's going to delay even further. I think the facility was aware of that. It didn't submit the application in a timely manner when they were due in 2018. Didn't resubmit when it was rejected, and the application, when they rejected it, they indicated what the fees were, and they could have resubmitted at that time with the fee. They didn't do that. So I'm sympathetic to the economic situation and the what's going on with the market and the inability to sell the product. At the same time, we have to consider the fact that the community is still, we heard there's 30 complaints already since the last hearing, and while it's not attributed to one specific facility, the longer we delay the implementation and can be in compliance with the rule, and we know that enclosing the area will make a big difference. We know the wastewater treatment, having controls on that will make a big difference to the odor. So I think the longer we delay, the worse it is for the community. So I'm okay in extending the dates to the end of the month for submitting the application and July 16 for paving, but I think we should hold them to the expedited only just to send the, that this is necessary for us to move forward, get the application going, get the construction going as soon as possible. So I can support the dates changes, but not removing the expedited fees.
I hear the reasons. Anyone else wish to be heard on that? Dr. Bernstein and then Ms. Verdugo-Peralta.
Just again, as far as I'm concerned, I would rather see those monies spent in improving the condition and doing a cleaner business and coming to compliance than worrying about fines. I understand your position, and it's not that I disagree with it, but for me, if I'm gonna, I'd rather see that money spent in getting things done.
Let me, it's actually not a fine, so let me, let us explain what it means. Expedited processing, the district generally has a backlog of permitting, and it may take, as Mr. Balagopalan knows all too well and has explained, could take a very long time to issue a permit. When expedited processing is paid, that time frame is significantly shortened, and as a result, we would see what is required by permit, which is the total enclosure of the wastewater treatment system, receiving area, and cooking area, as well as any controls in terms of pollution controls. So we would see that being implemented a lot sooner because of the expedited processing, and there's actually been a delay because that permit should have been in the works and probably already issued by now, and it should have been submitted as of November 3rd, 2018. So the expedited processing is actually bringing about real changes or real improvements in air quality and odor a lot sooner, but we're weighing that against the actual cost of it at this time.
If I may add, I think Ms. Peralta asked about the small business. They don't qualify for the small business. However, there is a provision in Rule 301, the fee rule, that due to financial difficulty, they can submit 85% of the fee with the application initially, but they have to pay the full amount before the permit is issued. So there is provision to in the rule to pay not the full amount but 85%, and then the balance has to be paid before the permit is issued. So.
To your knowledge, does that include expedited processing?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Verdugo-Peralta, you had.
Well, now that brings up a question of, okay, if they do pay that expedited fee, what is the estimated time difference between them submitting without the expedited fee and with it? Do you have any idea?
It's case by case. I cannot speak for the engineer. I expedited, as you know, the engineers come in on overtime to work on those permits. So they, in a project as complicated as this, probably it might. I'm just throwing a number. It might take about 3 months. I'm not saying it cannot be issued within a month or two. It might take 3 months versus 9 months. So I'm just throwing a number, but I cannot really speak for the staff. It depends on what their workload and so forth. But it does. It puts a burden, because those things are tracked, and it puts a burden on the staff to issue the permit in a timely manner with the expedited, instead of going into the backlog. Even though there are statutory requirements for a permit to construct, that after it's deemed complete should be issued within 6 months. So, 6 months to 9 months versus 3 months probably.
Okay, the reason I asked was because I was on the permit streamlining committee, the original one way back when.
Right.
So I'm aware of kind of the workload that that staff has. But I am concerned about the fact that, like the doctor said, that that money could be used to fix what is wrong. But I also am listening, and I'm hearing what you're saying in regards to getting it done and the permit being issued, because that is a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and the fixes, they should have been doing it, should have been done already. So it's not like we've taken the money away to the, for do that. That's something they should have done. They have not, they did not do it when they should have done it. And it's only after the order was issued that they've taken steps to do it. I understand the difficulty financially they're having, but I think we need to get the message out that this is serious, the community's been affected, we're still getting complaints, 30 complaints since the last time. So it's an ongoing issue. But I think the inspector sort of testified that the other facilities are coming into compliance, or, I don't want to put him on the spot and say, put him on that, but I think in a level playing field too, they all should be coming into compliance with the rule that the board adopted, the governing board adopted as soon as possible.
Can you clarify again, what was the percentage amount that they could pay?
Yeah, there's a provision which the governing board adopted as part of the perm streamlining recommendation, was they can pay 85% upfront if they have, and then the balance 15% has to be paid within, it depends, within the 3 months, let's say the engineer takes to process the permit. Before the permit is issued. So there's a provision to do that and accept the application with 85%
And
of the money.
since we did not get evidence of that as part of the hearing, is that something that you have 100% knowledge of, or do we need to?
Yeah, no,
to
I can
receive
cite
evidence of that?
I can cite the rule 301 too.
If you could, that would be great.
Yeah, let me. Oh, you know what? I don't know if it's, it might not be, come to think of it, it's a policy thing that was adopted by the governing board, so it is not in the rule, but I'm 100%, because we have done it, when I was on the permitting side, that has been done quite frequently, and the system was modified to accommodate that. But I don't, I think it was more of a policy, it's not in the rule.
I do recall when that was occurring on the governing board.
Yeah.
Senator.
What are the critical dates that have been set for them to comply with? July 16th is the one. What is the other date?
The two dates that we're looking for are either one or the other party has asked for modification is in Condition 9, that June 22nd, which passed and has not been fully complied with, for repair to July 16th. Mm-hmm. And then the request of the respondent was to change Condition 8 for the submission of the permit application to July 31st, 2019. And the district in Ms. Sue's closing said they're a little concerned with that, given that November 3rd, 2018 was when it was originally due, but not out and out opposed, I don't believe she said. And then there's the question of expedited processing, which we imposed at the last hearing into this order.
And Senator, are you asking about the order or what the rule dates are?
I'm asking about the order.
Order, okay.
Order. And then this board, I think, including myself, it sounds like would only be comfortable with a return date to ensure that the fees were paid and.
Are they expected to complete the requirements of the order by July 31st if it's not expedited?
They would have to
That's the key.
submit. They would have to submit the application by July 31st if we chose that date, or July 16th if we don't choose to change that date. The expedited processing, the payment of that, would then put the onus on the district to process and issue that permit significantly quicker, so that the total enclosure deadlines could move forward.
But if the expedited process is not, if they don't pay for it, it's not going to happen.
No, it does not happen unless it's paid
Therefore,
for.
this problem will continue.
The permit will go through the regular channels.
I understand, and the problem will continue until that point in time.
The rule has significant deadline. We're talking. There's not going to be a total enclosure for a long time. However, the process will start quicker with expedited processing.
Madam
And that
Chair.
costs money.
Yes.
Madam Chair, I did a quick calculation. So 85% if I'm correct here, would be approximately $12,910.65, which is $2,910 or so, actually $410 or so difference between the initial fee that they would have to pay of the $10,530.
That's helpful. Any other thoughts? And if there are no other thoughts, I think I'll make a motion. Okay. I'm going to make a motion, and then we'll take a vote, and we'll see where we stand. And my motion, and I'll be clear, I think will include the expedited processing with that understanding. In the matter of SCAQMD versus D&D Disposal, Inc., doing business as West Coast Rendering Company, case number 3462-4, I move that we find good cause to modify the existing order for abatement in the following ways. First of all, that we modify condition number 8 on page 8 to change the date of July 16th, 2019 to July 31st, 2019. And to be clear, my modification would not be, my motion would not be to remove the expedited processing from that. I further move to modify the order condition number 9, the date of June 22nd for repair of asphalt, to change that to July 16th, 2019. And I further move to modify condition number 13, status and modification hearing, to August 1st, 2019, which I believe is the first day after the July 31st deadline, that we would have appropriate notice. And that completes my motion with the other changes of just modifying the order to reflect today's hearing and who is present.
I second the motion.
I have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Dr. Bernstein.
Okay. Madam Chair, just for my own edification, could you just please clarify for me the expedited processing? It seems to me that makes no difference in we've set dates for compliance, correct?
The rule sets dates for compliance.
Right, but I mean, we're modifying those dates. So in your motion, we're modifying some rules give them time to come into compliance.
Let me clarify. Okay, so the rule, there's different dates depending upon whether you're talking about the order or the rule. Some are in common, but, okay, so the only date that would be in common with the rule is the date by which the submission of an application for the total enclosure and associated pollution control system must be submitted. And that date was November 3rd, 2018. This order would extend it to July 31st, 2019. But all the dates of actually constructing that enclosure and system are laid out, and in terms of timeframes, 1 year,
2 years.
2 years, and that all is keyed off of when the permit is issued. Expedited processing would close the gap between July 31st, 2019, that we have extended when respondent can submit a completed application, and November 3rd, 2018, when it was due, because it will then lessen or significantly reduce the amount of time that the district will take to process the permit, thus issue it, triggering 415 deadlines for construction. Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion before I call for a vote? Okay. Senator, how do you vote? Dr. Bernstein, how do you vote? Mr. Balagopalan, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Verdugo Peralta, how do you vote?
Aye.
I vote yes. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, so thank you. Good luck on compliance, and we will see you, hopefully with very good news, on August 1st. Thank you. Any other business, board members, before we adjourn for the day? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
The 85%, yeah. Right, oh, yeah, yeah, I didn't calculate, but yeah. And I forgot, it's not in the rules.